I've often been heard saying that the number one tool we can have in our toolbox as coaches is NLP skill. And the more skillful you are with NLP, the better coach you'll make. And then I'm going to start off tonight to say, so what happens when NLP stops working? When it doesn't work? You know, that's like almost a contradiction. And I think the reason why we're here is that, and I want you to just like raise your hand if this is you. If you've ever experienced this moment when your absolute best coaching tools, your reframe, your anchors, your parts work, just stop working. And if you know that moment you've ever experienced in your practice, just give me a thumbs up or a hand up and say, oh, I've been there. It's that moment when we're using the exact NLP technique that should work, but that we know is always working. But somehow the client is stuck. The client is what I call spinning, out of control, is completely in shutdown. And have you ever experienced it when you start asking a client questions and the only answer you get out of them is, I don't know. I don't know. And I remember in my career, a couple of those clients, and it becomes very frustrating for a coach because you want to hear what they have to say, and the only answer they give you is, I don't know. Now, that's typically a sign of, they're in shutdown or in spinning mode. And the core message today is very simple. The gap isn't your skill as a coach. It isn't around your training in NLP. It's literally around your understanding of the nervous system. We have an autonomous nervous system. It's real. It's an automatic mode. And that's what's creating the gap. So we're going to look at why trauma specifically. And I'm going to talk about trauma. Why trauma is not a mindset problem, but a nervous system protection pattern. In essence, when people suffer from trauma, our mind does what it's supposed to do, and that's to let us survive. So the nervous system creates a protection pattern, and that's literally the root cause of trauma. And I'll give you an exact protocol. Later on the program, I'm going to share an exact protocol how to reset that nervous system in the moment. When you're in your coaching session, when that breakdown has happened and you realize, I'm going to show you what it looks like, and then I'm going to show you how to reset the nervous system right there and then. Because once we've reset the nervous system, we can get back into coaching, and all these wonderful tools you have in your toolbox gets back into play. But without the reset, none of those tools can come into play. It's not a mindset problem. It's not a mental thing. It's literally a nervous system protection pattern. And the protocol I'm going to give you is literally my own proprietary way of resetting the nervous system. So this is not something I got from someone else. This is something that I personally use and have created in order to reset the nervous system. So I think on a video I said, if you coach humans, you have encountered 3 critical moments. There are the moments when your coaching effectiveness completely collapses. And that first moment when that happens, what we call the spiral. The client is speaking fast. Panic is rising up. You can literally feel the energy of panic stepping in. It's like they got into like almost verbal diarrhea, just like fast speech. And that fast speech is a sign of spiraling. The client's busy spiraling out of control. And there's literally a moment where it feels like they're hitting panic. And in that panic mode, they literally want to run away. That's what a spiral does to that client. Now, in that state, there's no listening to what you have to say. There's no answering the questions that you are posing. There's really that they're in such a big survival mode that nothing else is working. The second thing is they can experience is what I call a shutdown. And this is literally recognized when you see your client goes totally blank. There's a blankness, a numbness, a disconnectedness. When you ask a powerful question and literally the only response you get is, I don't know. And I've had this a number of times, and then I ask myself, dude, How do you not know what I'm asking you? Because the question is of such nature that you expect them to know and to give you an answer, and you are really in anticipation of that. And then out from their mouth comes, I don't know. What do you want for your life? I don't know. What have worked for you in the past? I don't know. Where do you think the breakdown comes? I don't know. And literally, no matter how many questions you ask, the only response you get is, I don't know. Now, that's a sure tell sign that that person has gone into shutdown mode. They are physically unable to be coached. Because you can imagine if you want to coach someone and the only answer you get is, I don't know. Where do you go from there? I don't know if anyone has an answer to where do you go from there? You cannot figure out exactly what it is you need, where the breakdown comes. So you can't even begin to decide what technique to use in this. Okay. And then there's this third area, which we call the performance. This is where you're literally coaching parrot. No matter what you say, the client just agrees with everything you say. They say the right things, but nothing actually changes. It's like almost parroting and mimicking what you're saying. So that they say the right things and they agree to everything, but there's no action. There's nothing that changes. There's no impact at the end of the day. Now, we call that it's a performance. It's a show. And we have to recognize that the performing role of a good client, the reality is, as coaches, we have compassion. But what we lack in these moments is the sequence to navigate the nervous system dysregulation. Because what has happened to your client is literally a nervous system dysregulation. So we try to coach the mind when the body is in crisis. And if I can explain it, I don't think there's an easier way to explain it. We're trying to speak to the mind when the body is in crisis. Because that's literally what's happening in these moments. The body is in crisis and we're trying to speak to the mind. So this literally brings up to reframe, the reframe that changes everything. Okay? It's literally, we have to understand that we have to stop thinking of trauma as a mindset problem. So right in the beginning, if we're going to deal with someone that suffers from trauma, that had traumatic experiences, and there's a large array of different things that cause trauma, and by the end of the session, I'll tell you about what's to come, where we're going to dive deep into each one of those areas that cause trauma. But in essence, the first step is to stop thinking of trauma as a mindset problem. It isn't just a belief. Trauma is a nervous system in protection pattern. It's a nervous system that's gone into overdrive to protect the human being. In NLP terms, we're talking about a chain reaction encoded so deep in the nervous system. It's not just a faulty belief at the surface. So when a client is in dysregulated state, they lose access to choice. This is what trauma takes away from you. It takes away choice. And when we have no choice, we have nowhere to go. They're not being difficult. They are being protected of themselves by a system that perceives danger in an overstated sense. And it's literally got stuck in the loop. I don't know if you've seen, I don't even know what the movie was, but this guy that gets stuck in the loop, and every so many hours he dies, and then he relives it, and then he dies again, and it's like a loop. It just keeps on going and going. Now, trauma is that thing that literally has pushed your nervous system into survival mode, into a loop. That's what happens. So the first thing that we need to bear in mind is that we're dealing with a system in protection mode, and it has perceived a danger, and it's not come out of that perception. So the coaching shift is literally profound. The real question here is not what do you want, but can this client access choice right now? That's the real question. Can he access choice right now? Now, when choice is unavailable, your reframe becomes an intellectual noise. And I have absolutely, by no stretch of the imagination, do I intend to break down anything on any NLP technique. This is not the intention. But in this situation, when we've removed choice, trauma has caused that. Your reframes become intellectual noise. Your goal setting becomes a pressure. I remember working with a client and we started talking goal setting, and he goes, dude, I'm in such a deep hole. I don't even look to tomorrow and expect the day to be better. So all that goal setting does in that moment is it adds pressure. So to restore choice, we must first understand the concept of what I call the window of tolerance. And this framework really separates elite coaches from struggling ones. Our ability to understand there's this thing we call a window of tolerance. Now, in essence, what it is the window of tolerance. I want you to think of a zone where your client is available for coaching, and we call that inside the window. So if the client's inside the window, they can reflect, they can choose, they can decide, and they can act from clarity. And that's perfectly well inside the window to coach. That's our ideal world for coaching, is when we have a client inside the window of tolerance. When a client's outside the window of tolerance, however, the client literally enters protection mode. They only move in two directions. There's an up, and we're going to call that up hyperarousal, and I'll talk about that just now. And there's a down, and we call that hypoarousal. Okay, so in the up, there's a high energy. In the down, they speak slowly. They literally slow down. The golden rule here is that you cannot coach outside the window. So when their nervous system is either in hyper or hypoarousal mode, it's an overdrive. And in that overdrive, you're outside the window. You cannot coach outside the window. Okay? So we have to first work on the state. We have to first change the state. And literally this single thing is the key. We change the state. We bring them inside the window of tolerance. We can then coach. We can then proceed with our normal coaching practices, our normal tools, and the things. Outside the window, when they're in hyper or hypoarousal, it's literally in such an overstate that coaching has absolutely no effect on them. So we first bring them back inside the window, and then we start speaking to them, to start thinking, to planning. We start reframing and all the other techniques that we use. So let's look a bit closer on the first direction, and we call that hyperarousal. Okay. Now, arousal, in essence, is the thing that kicks your sympathetic nervous system into gear. That's the thing that starts it up, is arousal. And then we literally get this thing we call hyperarousal. This is a state where the system is overactivated and the client is spiraling. Remember, we said in the beginning that spiraling is the first thing that can happen. In hyperarousal, the state is literally overactivated and the client is literally spiraling. Okay? We've gone into fight or flight response because something created a fear that pushed us into flight or fight. And this is when the system overactivates. Now, normal human being behavior, if there's an outside thing that arouses us and it index the fight or flight, we gear up to either run fast or to fight hard. But the moment the brain realizes there's no more harm coming our way, there's no more danger, we have an automatic switch out of fight or flight. Now, just for a moment, I want you to think about what happens if on a daily basis you stimulate the brain with the very same thing. We use as an affirmations, for instance, and we repeat. What happens when we repeat a concept to the brain? Neurons that fire together, wire together, right? And we create neural pathways. So what happens if I have an horrific thing happening to me again and again and again? One of the things that create trauma. We activate fight or flight because there's an arousal. But it happens again and again and again, so that arousal gets stuck in a loop. It's created a neural pathway that now sits in that mode. Now, in hyperarousal mode, we recognize that because we see fast speech, we see high levels of anxiety, a tightness in the chest, agitation, panic, and often a lot of anger. And the client in this moment is in a state of urgency. That's the telltale sign that is in hyperarousal. We have gone over what is good for us. The cortisol level in your blood at that moment in time is overstated by a great degree. Apart from the adrenaline, noradrenaline, epinephrine, and a whole array of other things that has been activated the moment you went into hyperarousal. So in essence, what happens inside the body is screaming danger. And even when the mind recognizes it's safe, you're in the office, it's a safe space, the body is still screaming danger. So we're not coming out of that fight or flight. And then something magnificent or crazy happens. The prefrontal cortex, physically, the part of the brain responsible for logic and planning, goes offline. Literally. It's like you're switching the system off. It's just gone offline. That part of the brain that gives us an ability to have logic. That's why when we see people in this hyperarousal state, logic does not apply. The prefrontal cortex has gone offline. I'm in pure survival mode now. Now, I've explained it in another session. I explained it. What literally happens, the blood drains from your brain. It goes into your major muscle groups so that you can run fast, fight hard, or be strong where the resources are needed. The physical change comes in the prefrontal cortex right in the front of your head. That part that gives you the ability to plan and to be logic goes offline. So trying to reason with them at this point in time is literally utterly useless. You cannot talk to them out of a physiology state. The goal here is to gently bring the energy down and to restore the sense of safety. We need that prefrontal cortex to re-engage. We literally need them to come out of the fight or flight. We need to reset the nervous system. We need them to ground in the present moment. Without that, guys, there's no coaching session that's going to do anything. No matter how skilled you are and how capable and confident you are in your techniques, this is not when the technique doesn't work. Okay? And we'll look at the exact protocol for this in a moment. First, let's look at the other direction the system can go. So we have hyperarousal. We're so deep in fight or flight that the prefrontal cortex shuts down and goes offline. The other option the brain has is to go into hypoarousal. Now, what happens here is somewhere in this process of going into protection mode, we go to a switch that says, man, running and fighting ain't going to work. You can't run fast enough. This thing chasing you, you're not fast enough. And you can't fight hard enough. So you better go and be really quiet and still and go. And we call that fight, flight, or freeze. Now, when someone goes in freeze, it's literally when we hit hypoarousal. Okay? It's still a shutdown in the system. Now, this is where the client goes blank, disconnected, numb. He's going in freeze mode. Nothing else works. They're not being resistant. Their system is literally conserving energy by collapsing. It just conserves energy now. I'm not going to outrun the danger. I'm not going to outfight the danger. I better conserve energy. And my primary function now is breathe. Let me just stay alive. Okay, let me shut down and nothing else should matter in this moment in time. So we need to gently again bring that system back online. So that's what trauma does to people. It literally disconnects the system in the prefrontal cortex until we reset the nervous system. Okay? So bringing them gently down, we do this by focusing on grounding and orientation. And you'll pick this up when we do the technique just now. So we literally in this moment going to ask them to just simply feel their feet and then put weight on their feet as if they want to leave a footprint on the floor, in the sand, on the ground. at the end of the day so they can be properly grounded. We're then going to ask them to simply look around and find a neutral object. No pressure to find words. Remember, finding words in this moment is not a possibility. The system has gone offline. They are frozen up. So we're using physical sensation, literally, and visual orientation to reconnect the mind and the body as a first step. And this is how we move them from shutdown back towards the window of choice. Okay? Now let's just for a moment look at the ladder that governs these states. So the image you are looking at is literally what's known as a polyvagal theory. And simplified for coaching, this is the ladder that shows us where the client is and what needs, what they need, and at the top, and what we have when we engage a ventral vagal state. Now, we all know that our vagus nerve runs throughout the whole body, and the vagus nerve is one of the things responsible to engage our fight or flight index, to engage the nervous system. A high vagal tone puts us in rest mode, relax mode. A low vagal tone puts us into an overstated drive. And we call that the window of choice. Okay? This is where connection, curiosity, and choice live. And this is where we coach. This is where our coaching strategies work. Now, on the below side, we have the sympathetic state, fight or flight response. And on the bottom side, we have the dorsal vagus state, and this is the freeze or shutdown response, the hypoarousal state. The golden rule for trauma, and I call it trauma-informed coaching. This is not therapy. It's trauma-informed coaching. It's simple. You cannot coach strategy outside the window of choice. If they're in fight or flight or freeze mode, your NLP tools will fail. There's a chance it might even cause harm. Your job is to help them climb the ladder back to the top, where every intervention must be regulated first. And this is the thing of trauma, guys. If we do not regulate the nervous system, there's no going anywhere else. And I think it's one of the reasons why many coaches stay out of trauma. I built this program, and I'm having this talk because of the amount of times people call me and ask me, how do you deal with trauma we're not getting through? People in their workplace run into someone that has suffered from trauma, and no matter what they do with them, they don't get through to them. Okay? If they're in fight or flight or freeze mode, you need to fix that first. It's a state change, it's a nervous system change, and that's our jobs first. So every intervention must be regulated intervention first. This is the foundation of trauma coaching, of dealing with a client of trauma. And there are many things that can cause trauma. Violence, rape, motor car accidents, death. There are a lot of things that can cause trauma. People that had a consistent exposure to the same harm will have a deep-rooted trauma. Trauma sometimes can be incredibly involved and technical and difficult. Okay, so when we coach people in trauma, we have to be super mindful of what's in front of us. So I want to I've got a slide on the screen that gives you the process, but I want you to sit back and I'm going to do the protocol with you. I'm going to give you a physical example of how the protocol runs. I want you to see this for real in action. How do we reset the thing? So right now, where you are right now, I want you to just quickly check your body and see how you feel in this moment. Now, we're going to do this entire exercise as an eyes open exercise. I'm a really big fan of Milton. I'm a really big fan of closed eye exercises. This is not the moment for it. Okay, so when we deal trauma, We're going to do a reset. The name of this protocol is the choice point reset. We're going to work eyes open. We are dealing with an individual whose system has gone offline. We don't want to shut the eyes down now so the mind can start wandering around. We need everything to work. Okay? And then we're going to go through a process. And literally, we're going to, just the 5 steps to the process, we're going to first orientate, then we're going to breathe, then we're going to ground, then we're going to install some things I call glimmers, and then we're going to seal it up. Okay, so right in this moment in time, put down whatever you got in your hand so you can be fully in the session. I want you to be fully present now and in this moment in time so you can experience it, because I want to ask you questions afterwards. So I want you to be really present in this moment. This is what a nervous system reset looks like. And I want you to keep your eyes open. You can slightly just soften your glaze. And I want you to remember in this moment right here now, you are in control. So in any moment in time, if anything feels too much, you stop. I want you to simply look around the room, and we're not going to go into any stories. We're not going to relive any traumas. We literally just, I want you to just look around the room, slowly turn your head around, side to side, scan your space, and let your eyes land on whatever you find in that room that's neutral and real. And I want you to find 3 stable things you can see. And as you find the 3 stable things in your room you can see, I want you to name them in your mind. Stable thing, a door, a window, just find whatever looks stable to you in your room, whatever that looks like. Let's find one and name it in the mind. 2, let's find another one. We name it in the mind. And let's find a 3rd thing, neutral and stable and real. And let's just name that thing in the mind. I want you to shift your focus now and feel your feet. Really feel your feet and focus on the feeling in your feet. And I want you to just gently press them into the floor. And as you press them into the floor for maybe 2-3 seconds, press them into the floor as if you want to leave your footprint there, and then release. Just focus on your feet. Gently just press them into the floor as you want to leave your mark there. 1, 2, 3, and release. And as you've left your mark, I want you to take a nice deep breath in, and we're going to breathe into the count of 4 through the nose. And when we breathe out through the mouth, I'm going to breathe out to the count of 6. So let's take a nice deep breath in. And on that first breath, I want you to consciously tell your nervous system in your mind, I am safe enough. 2, 3, 4, out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's take another deep breath in. I am safe enough. 2, 3, 4, and out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One more deep breath in. 2, 3, 4. I am safe enough. Out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And just take a nice deep breath in. And as you breathe in, just gently soften your shoulders as you're coming back online into the present. And just be in the present. And while we in this moment, very present, very grounded, safe enough, I want you to name 5 things in your mind you can see in this moment. Just 5 things you can see. Let's move and name 4 things you can feel. in this moment. Just in your mind, find 4 things you can feel: feet, your chair, your hands, the air on your skin, whatever it looks like for you, and name 4 things you can feel. Let's find 3 things you can hear. Just become aware of all the sounds around you, wherever you are sitting right now in this moment, and let's find 3 things you can hear. Just name it in your mind. As you find it, you just name it in your mind. I can hear. Let's now find 2 things you can smell. Just name it in your mind. I can smell. And as you found that, let's find 1 more thing. And let's focus on 1 thing I can taste. And if it's hard for you to find something you taste, I want you to find 1 thing you can appreciate right now. Just that 1 thing. Either taste or find that 1 thing that you can appreciate in this moment right now. And then we recognize that this moment is real. You are here in this moment. We're now going to move forward and install some glimmers. Glimmers are micro signals of safety. In this moment in time, your brain is already trained to find threat. We're now going to train it to find safety and purpose. It already knows how to find threat. Let's show it how to find safety and purpose. We're going to choose 3 glimmers using the 3S method. And the first S stands for still. So find something steady, unmoving in your environment right now. Straight line, solid object, corner of the room. And let your eyes just gently rest there for a couple of seconds. And as your eyes rest on that thing that is still, just gently exhale and let your breathing just soften. Let's move to the second S. It's called support. Be aware and notice in this moment what is supporting you right now. Perhaps the chair that's holding you, perhaps the floor under your feet. And I want you to really experience that support, feel that support for a couple of seconds. And as you become aware that you are fully supported in this moment, right here, right now, just let your shoulders gently drop. Just that tad, little drop. Nothing too serious. And let's find the third glimmer, the signal. Let's find a small internal signal of safety. What is your internal signal of safety? Perhaps the warmth in your hands. Perhaps your jaw unclenching. Perhaps the feeling of your breath leaving your body. Noticing that it's ever so slightly softer, calmer, more regulated. And let's, in this moment in time, just internally, let's hold on to all 3 of them together. The still, the support, and the signal. And let's create a rule: when that trigger hits, you don't argue with the trigger. Your answer lies in the glimmer, in that still thing, in that support that's carrying you, in that signal of internal safety. I I want you to now slowly say this and let your body agree. Let's enter into agreement with the body. I am here. And I want you to repeat either out loud or silently for yourself and get your body to agree to this. I am here. I am safe enough. I can choose. Let's just repeat that. I want you to repeat it to yourself. You can either go out loud or you can go softly in your mind and let your body agree. I am here in this moment. I am safe enough. I can choose. And just for a moment, as you sit there, I want you to imagine the next moment you feel that pressure rising. And I want you to imagine how you're using the choice point process, the three stable things, the three glimmers, the long exhale, the back into choice. That whole process as we started and as we've gone through it up to now. And let's seal it in. And I want you to physically show this to me on your camera. If your camera is on, I want you to just take your index finger and your thumb and firmly, very firmly press it together. And as you firmly press it together, I want you to just slightly lift your chest, as if you're picking your chin up. And as you move the chin up, I want you to just slightly drop your shoulders down. This is our seal for this process. Our thumb and our index finger firmly pressed together. We slightly lift our chest and we slightly drop our shoulders down. And we say to our mind, steady, safe enough, and choice. Steady, safe enough, choice. Take a nice deep breath in. And as you exhale, take an extraordinary long exhale. Good. I want a couple of you to unmute. Tell me exactly how you feel right now in this moment. Just unmute and shoot. What do you feel like right now in this moment?
For me, fully present and just really relaxed.
Fully present and just really relaxed. And we realize when we're fully present, Winnie, we have choice, right?
Yeah.
I can make good decisions. Yes, that's what a nervous system reset looks like. I feel fully present. I feel ready to make decisions. You can now coach. When we have a client in this state where they're fully present, we can now coach. And you have all the coaching tools in the world available to you. Okay? Anyone else want to shoot?
Yes, I want to share.
Yes, I mean.
Hi everyone. The past week, I've been in hospital for something called a migraine aura. So I've previously had a head injury, specifically due to trauma. And my body's been in such a tense situation. I've been for physio even earlier today because I have knots in my body. And I can say this exercise, I can feel the release in my back. So yeah, like it
Oh, wow.
does work.
Fantastic.
Specific because
Here you go.
yes.
Okay?
So wow, like really.
Yeah. It's literally just bringing it outside of the hyperarousal or hypoarousal and bringing it back into the present. We've switched nervous system. This process literally brings the parasympathetic nervous system into play. It's our relax and digest mode. Everything in the body feels better. We can now coach. And it's really that, when we talk about master coaching, as the coaching algorithm is literally your decision. And the tree is the real-time coaching. You decide. It answers questions. If this happened, then what do I do? We first assess the state. We cannot coach a client that's not in the right state. Okay? If the client's inside the window of choice, we can coach. If the client's outside the window of choice, we need to reset the nervous system first. If they're aspiring, it's a sign that they're outside of the window, they're in hyperarousal, and we're going to literally just pause there. And we might even say to the client, your system is trying to protect you. So we're going to slow this down in a moment just so that you can have choice. That's how I get into that sequence of breaking it. I can see your system is trying to protect you in this moment. And for us to work well and profound, I'm going to slow it down slightly so that you can choose. And then I go to the choice point reset. If they're shutting down, we literally go to, there's no pressure to find words here. They're in shutdown. The more pressure we point on them, the more questions we ask them, the more they're trying to find words. So the script for this is literally, there's no pressure here to find words. You don't have to find them. I want you in this moment to just feel your feet. So the moment I recognize they're in shutdown mode, I know I can no longer coach. I have to do something different. I go, there's no pressure to find words right now. Let's just focus on finding your feet. And I want you to feel your feet. And let's press them into the floor. And that automatically puts me into the choice point reset sequence, right? I've done that right in the beginning. Let's just find our feet. Let's focus on that feeling. It takes the guesswork out of trauma-informed coaching. There are only those two states. It's either very high or very low. I'm in fight or flight or I'm in freeze mode. If I need to move from fight or flight mode, I can literally go down and say, and go, let's reset. I want to slow it down. They're in freeze mode. I can't slow it down. There's no pressure to find words here. Let's just find our feet. That's the way we go about it, to recognize we're dealing with trauma and to do a reset first before we coach. Okay? Inside the window, we can coach. Outside the window, there is absolutely no coaching. We use orientation, breath, feet on the floor to bring hyper down. We use the feet press, the look left and right to find the tiny steps to bring up. We name it in our brain. As we find that stable thing, we name it in our brain. That's the charm of the technique. Okay? Cool. Does it make sense, guys? You following? Okay. So let's apply that for tools you already know. And we all know that NLP tools are incredibly, incredibly powerful. And that's why it's like surgery when I use the right tool. So inside the window of choice, your NLP techniques becomes mastery, surgical. This is where reframing honors reality, where parts work respects the protector, where anchoring restores resource access, and the client has the capacity to integrate and change. Outside the window, however, some of these tools create harm. So going to meaning too soon is a bypass. Going to why questions too soon creates shame. Why do you think this happened? That makes them feel shameful when they're in this overstated drive. Okay? Asking them, tell me the story. It's horrid when you've suffered trauma. And then you sit with a therapist saying, tell me what happened. How was it? How does it feel in your body? Can you imagine that person that's just gone through violence, rape, murder, horrid things, and we ask them to tell the story? What do you think is the chance that they're going to relive the trauma? Their brain's already shutting down. I'm helping them to relive it. Let's see if we can relive it enough times so it makes a loop and it stays there. That's where, by the way, where PTSD, TD comes from. Consistent exposure until it created the loop, it got stuck there. That's why it's a complex trauma. And it needs complex things to help with that. Okay? So we jump to these why questions and tell me the story too soon. It's literally flooding the brain, shutting it down. So mastery is simply to know what the nervous system can handle right now, to know where I'm at right now. And timing is literally everything. So the same tool that can heal in one moment can harm in another, depending on the client's state of their nervous system. Very same tool that we use on a daily basis to help people can harm them if their state of their nervous system is not at the right place. Okay? It's literally, and then there's this belief that keeps coaches stuck, even if they have the right tools. So I want to literally go through the 3 lies that live out there. The 3 lies that keeps coaches stuck. Okay? It's common lies about change. And these lies undermine trauma-informed coaching. Lie number 1, if they understand it, they'll change. It's not the truth. You know? So we think if we explain it to them and they understand it, they will change. It's not the truth. Reality check. Insight without regulation is just intellectual comfort. There's no change there. Understanding is not choice. Choice is state dependent. Trauma removes choice. That's why trauma hurts. So understanding is definitely not choice. Choice is state dependent. Okay? Line number 2, if I get to the root cause, they'll be free. So if I ask enough questions, I dive deep enough, I get a deep enough understanding, and I get to the root cause of the problem, they'll be free. I call it root cause obsession. Often becomes reliving the trauma. Because in the process, we're literally digging. What are we digging into? We're digging into the experience. That's what we do. Okay? So getting to the root cause doesn't make them free. To have an obsession with getting to the root cause, to getting to the crux of the matter, you know, I want to get behind the story. Often with trauma makes them relive the trauma. Freedom comes from updating the response in the present and not excavating the past. We're not excavating the past. We're not reliving that thing. Okay? Line number 3, if they're crying, we're making progress. There's an emotional release. They're crying, we're making progress. Emotion is not a transformation. Progress is more choice, more stability, better behavior in their lives. Emotion is just that. It's an emotional release. It's most certainly not a sign or a signal of making progress. What trauma does, guys, is trauma steals agency. So every trauma-informed session has one sacred mission. One sacred mission, one thing. You got one job to do, and that's return agency to the client without making them relive the past. We restore choice. Here's the question. What happens if the client needs more than coaching? When we deal with trauma, one of the things we talk about is the boundaries of what we do. PTSD is a complex trauma and might need more than coaching. This is where we have to set boundaries and go and recognize that this person needs more than what I can give. Okay? This is where referral happens. This is where we get more help of more skilled people. The final piece of mastery is knowing your professional scope. Trauma-enforced coaching does not pretend to be a therapist. We work here ethically. I'm not a medical doctor. It doesn't mean you're less. That means mastery. Trauma coaching is not trauma treatment. When something more is needed, we need to refer. We need to know what red flags look like. So when we deal with severe disassociation, for instance, that is a telltale sign of, I need more. I need to refer this to a really, really skilled person dealing with trauma, most probably a medical doctor type of person. When they actively self-harm consistently, when they have psychosis, when the abuse is ongoing, nothing is changing. Because that ongoing repetition of abuse is literally taking the trauma they have and it's imprinting it into the brain. That's what happens with it naturally. Okay? So we focus on identity reconstruction after the trauma, restoring forward action, and restoring agency. We coach future, we don't coach past. That's what we do in trauma-informed coaching, is we can recognize it, we can switch the nervous system, we can then coach them, and we coach to the future. And every single technique designed to help people with trauma in a coaching environment is based on coaching to the future. It's not about reliving the past. It's not about a regression, a taking back, and let them relive it. Okay? And this is a truth that really the single insight that separates elite coaches from other coaches. Elite coaches restore choice. They're not pushing for insight. So every intervention, every question is filtered through one lens. One lens. Does what I'm doing right now restore or diminish the client's sense of agency? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Is what I'm doing with this client in this moment in time when I'm working with a trauma client, is what I'm doing, this is the measure, restoring or diminishing the client's sense of agency, their choice. Okay? Does it take their choice away or give them choice? Now, here's the thing about it. If today made you realize that you've been coaching mind and not nervous system, then maybe there's a next step for you. And depth isn't how much pain we open. And I want you to really understand this. Depth is not how much pain we open. Depth is how much choice we restore for the client. I'm going to reiterate that. When we get depth in this thing, it's not about how much pain we can open. It's how much choice we can restore for the person suffering from trauma. Does that make sense to you? Okay. So what we're going to do, if this makes sense to you, if you're going to get really skilled, if you're the kind of person that sits in a position where you deal with trauma people all the time, it's a thing that you run in regularly, it's a thing that you really, really, really want to do. I think it's Tuesday next week. I'm going to run a webinar specifically for trauma-informed coaching. I've put a program together to train coaches up in detail how to deal with trauma. The various ways, what that coaching sessions look like, how to engage them differently at the end of the day. So if this is ringing true for you, I want to invite you, and I think Celeste is going to put a link in the chat, I think, where you can register. The webinar is Tuesday evening, and it's free of charge. You can join in on the webinar. I'm going to show you an incredible journey that we've built for coaches to do what I call trauma-informed coaching and trauma-informed coach mastery. How do we master trauma? You know, what does that questions look like when we deal with a rape victim? Because it's entirely different to when we deal with someone with another problem. What does those questions look like when we deal with someone that comes from physical abuse in a close relationship? And what I've done in the program, it's a 2-day intensive. It's going to come up shortly. I have literally picked the top 10 things that cause trauma, the top 10 occurrences causing trauma. And in the training, I'm going to show you how to deal with each one of those individually. It's really a masterclass. Okay? It's not a surface level thing. Trauma coaching, guys, is not a surface level thing. It's a deep thing. It's an understanding thing. It's an understanding nervous system thing. It's being able to, at the right moment, kick in and just run through the protocol to reset the nervous system. It's about being able to recognize that nervous system as reset. It's about moving into the coaching session with kindness and with order, picking the right tool, picking the right questions to ask. And I'm sure you're quite aware if we pick the wrong questions, we're going to bring the hurt back. The hurt comes back, the choice gets removed. The body is automatically going to go into arousal again. There's an automatic thing. It's called the autonomous nervous system. Okay, so it's not going to wait for anything. It's going to either hyper-arouse you or hypo-arouse you. It's going to put you in fight or flight and freeze mode. I get the client back into their trauma. I'm forcing them back into that state. In that state, nothing can happen. So we have to know how do we move from restoring the state into a coaching session? How do we coach trauma? And that's why I call it trauma-informed coaching. There are some people on this group that might be very skilled and are trauma therapists. It's something different. Okay? As coaches, we run into trauma all the time. Person comes in, we ask them, why are you here today? What are we working on? And they flat into a state. They suffer from trauma. They don't know how to articulate it. They just automatically shut down. If I can recognize it, I can reset it, I can go into a proper coaching session and we can help that client. Okay? If it becomes a very complex trauma, we recognize the red flags. We go, I think we need more than this. You need to be able to recognize that. Is there any questions? Yes, Charis.
What happens if you've got a client who you can definitely see they need extra help and you've suggested the extra help to them, but they refuse to acknowledge it?
Yeah, in essence, the refusal to acknowledge the Charis is that the suggestion of the extra help came before the nervous system reset into a place where it's present and can make proper choices. Remember, when your nervous system bombs out, and I have no other way of explaining it, it's literally your nervous system bombs out. Logic does not apply. So we're expecting a logical conversation of someone that does not have, in that moment, the ability to be logical. That's why nervous system reset is such a crucial part. We're trying to have a logical conversation of someone who cannot think logically in the moment. Okay? And then the second thing to that answer to that question, Charis, is that many a time when we want to suggest extra help, it's the way we frame it that helps them either stay in a frame where they're calm and open to those suggestions, or where they go back into fight or flight mode. Remember, that's what the index does. There's something that happens that pushes me over the edge. That's where the whole thing comes from with the nervous system, what it does. It engages. It's automatic. Many people can't recognize it. They don't see it in front of them. They don't realize the client is either in hyperarousal or hypoarousal. They don't recognize it. And now we come with questions, and now we get, I feel that we need to, get you different help. And that guy can't even think logically, man, depending on what state he's in. You first need to control the state, then those conversations work better. That's why it's such an important thing when I built the masterclass, to make sure that you understand how we bridge, how we move from a state reset into a coaching environment. Okay, so it's not just like jumping in. There's a process where we finish up the state reset and then we move into the coaching environment, and we move slowly. And we need to be mindful that we keep the client in that good state, because when he has choice, it's an open discussion. I'm open to listen. If I'm in an overdrive, I'm not open to listen. Does it make sense? Yeah? First, control the nervous system. Guys, remember, it says autonomous nervous system. It's on autopilot. So most of the time, it's out of check, and we don't even realize. It's done. It's doing its own thing. You don't even realize. Shani, do I see her hand?
Yes. So I wanted to ask something. So once you've gotten the client into this state, which is a place where they can make choice, and you move slowly into your coaching phase, there will always, am I right in saying there will always be the possibility that the person can move back into the hyper or hypo, and then
Yes,
you've
of
got
course.
to reset again. Am I correct by
It
saying that? So you would
absolutely,
have to
because it's an
reset it
autonomous
again.
nervous system. It's automatic. Okay, so many a time, one of the things that I teach on a regular basis is breath work. So I don't start a coaching session, for instance, without taking a couple of deep breaths in the beginning. Why? It switches the nervous system open, and I have an open mind to work with. Many times in a coaching session, you get a breakdown. People get emotionally overwhelmed. In that moment, I have a way, and some of the people on this group have experienced me doing this. I just literally go to the point. I see the overwhelm. Let's slow the breath down. Let's take a couple of nice deep breaths. I create a new safe space in that moment in time, because what happens, where does that emotion come from? You understand, you're going towards that overdrive state, so it's controllable in the moment. And I stop in a moment if I recognize that moment. If there's a total going into hyper or hypo state, I go to reset. Then I skip breath work. Breath work is that thing where I hear something coming up and I want to control that state. I'm going to slow the breath down. Take a couple of deep breaths. I use box breathing as my personal favorite go-to. Sometimes, 4, 6, 7 breathing. We want to slow the breath down because that switches the nervous system. Part of going into the coaching, there's a thing that I call, what is the next step we can take? But that next step, sometimes when I've done that switch over of the nervous system, wanting to get into it, is, would you like a glass of water? Now, in essence, from an NLP point, it's perhaps called a pattern interrupt at the end of the day, but it's a specific thing in a specific time where we're taking an easy thing to do next, like grabbing a glass of water and drinking a glass of water, and then we can continue into the coaching session.
Okay.
Yeah, and then any moment in time it goes into hyper or hypo state, it's simple. You have to reset first.
And this can occur a number of times during any form of a session. As I would understand,
Absolutely so. Yeah.
any form of trauma could take you back and forth, dependent on anything could trigger a client, in actual fact. So you could go back and forth.
That's the major reason why I believe if you're going to run into trauma, train how to deal with it properly. Learn how to deal with it properly. It is a complex issue. It is a very complex issue. And I don't want to undercut anything, that we have some absolutely, and I truly believe in my heart, the number one tool we can ever use as a coach is NLP. It is the most powerful of all tools. Okay, this is the one instance where if you're out of state, the tool doesn't work. You get it back into state, we get it back into the coaching session, we have to control the state. I have to control my state first, and then I control the client's state to make sure that they have choice. We're dealing with a trauma person here, and like anything else, master the art if that's what you're doing. It's the same thing I will always say. You're a coach, you're a professional person. Be professional at coaching. Master the art of coaching. How do I master the art of coaching? I learn everything there is to learn about coaching. There's a reason why Action Factory has a gazillion different programs for executive coaches, abundance coaches, whatever version there is of a coach. There's a reason why there's not only one program. Because each one of those areas have specific things. And it's those specific things that make you as a coach a master coach. Why is it that you have to do, I don't know, Dion, I see Dion's back up, 200 hours on a research project to get a master certification in coaching? Why is that? Because unless you spend the time and you get the knowledge and you practice and rehearse, there's no becoming masterful at it, guys. This is really the reality of it. as coaches and as people in business, we run into trauma all the time. 9 out of 10 times, we don't know how to deal with that trauma. Okay, we have absolutely no inkling, and we're trying to use ordinary tools for extraordinary circumstances. So if this rings for you, jump Tuesday night, jump on a webinar with me. I'm going to give you some insights as to what lies ahead and what we've put together to really equip coaches to deal with trauma better and how to be proficient in what you do. Learn everything there's to learn about the coaching business is what will make you masterful at your art. It's what will equip you to help people better. Okay? The more you learn, the better. That's why it's available. And that's why we put these things together. It's really, we recognize how many times people run into these situations and then they get stuck themselves. And it's really hurtful. Trauma is a hurtful thing. Really. Okay? Does it make sense? Any other questions, comments, Dion?
I love that. I think that masterclass, I put it on the text in the chat. I just want to have a quick reaction from the group here. If your camera's on, put your hand in the air if you learned something tonight. Raise your hand if you learned something tonight. Brilliant. That's what we're here for. That's the whole idea.
Yeah.
So yeah, love it. Thank you. Thank you.
It's part of the platform, guys. And I want you to recognize that, it's one of the reasons why I spend a lot of time on Action Factory and Action Factory platforms is the abundance of knowledge that's available, the abundance of really skilled people that have got really good insights that's available. It's the rubbing of shoulders of like-minded people. It's that kind of community. There are some really you are underestimating the amount of knowledge just sitting on this call tonight. It's incredible the amount of skill that sits on this platform tonight. Okay, because there are some, all of you has got incredible knowledge and incredible skill. And that's the privilege we have with Coach the Coaches is we have a lot of people that's really, really good at what they do, that has a lot of knowledge, and everyone is really keen on sharing and making the world a better place. And that's really what we are driving. So one of the things that I do is I consistently create and build new training programs to step people up and make it available so people can learn and become better at what they do. We want to create, this is part of Dion's vision that he told me one day, is to create the best coaches in the world. That was his vision. Okay? This is my small part of helping to create that. My little 5 cents worth to make sure that we are creating the best coaches in the world. Okay, so join me Tuesday night. Thanks for the opportunity, Dion. I appreciate it. And let's see what we have put together for you as a trauma-informed coach and mastery. Everything I do is going to come from a mastery perspective. We don't dabble. We don't just put our toe in it. We create the content in such a way that it's masterful. Okay, there's no half measure. You would have noticed. I don't do half measures. It's either going to give you everything I know, and I've done the research and I've put it together to make sure it's really profound, or absolutely, if it's me, I won't do it. Dion is the very same thing. You will get nothing on Action Factory that's not in depth. It's deep things. It's not surface level things. That's what I like the most. I appreciate each and every one of you. I appreciate you being here tonight and giving me the opportunity to give you a small insight into a really, really big subject.